Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our June Breakfast Speaker Series, Building a Stronger and More Resilient Workforce. My name is Kate Narden, and I am VP for Programs at SR Chicago. We do have some new attendees in the room today, so I just wanted to remind you that SR Chicago has a strict no solicitation policy. We are here to attend today's program and learn from each other, so please respect the space. Questions can be submitted into the chat, which we will direct to our moderator throughout the session. If you are not yet a member with Social Responsibility Chicago, I encourage you to sign up. Thanks to our membership, we are able to produce dynamic programming and share valuable thought leadership resources on very timely topics. We are continually enhancing our member-only offerings, delivering even greater value to you and what you bring to your work and your organizations every day. Membership info will be shared in the chat. Once again, I want to extend my gratitude to our Social Responsibility Chicago members and the contributors who helped shape our programs. And today's program is no exception. It is my very great pleasure to introduce our program moderator, Kylan Fisher. Kylan works with the Chicago Community Trust as program director for the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance. In this role, she serves as the convener of the Network of Employer-Led Workforce Solutions, an initiative promoting the value of employer collaboration on shared workforce challenges and providing tools that facilitate employers connecting with other employers and community resources. We are very grateful to have Kylan help steer today's discussion along with our notable panelists, Deanne Pillar-Jackson, Tammy Hilberry, Shay Robinson, and April Harrington. Thank you all for sharing your time and insight with us this morning, and I'm now going to hand it over to Kylan.
I think you're on mute, Kylan.
First thing off, and I'm already. Okay, welcome everybody to this really exciting panel. Before I bring the wonderful team of panelists into this discussion, I'm just going to kind of let you know where I'm coming on from this conversation. So as the convener of the Network of Employer-Led Workforce Solutions, or NEWS, my role is to help lift up and provide support to the work already being done throughout the Chicagoland area, as seen by the panelists you're going to be hearing from today. There's a big push within Chicagoland to really change the dynamics on how we look at workforce issues and really bringing all players to the table, including employers, and thinking about how employers both have the power and the responsibility to be active partners and leaders in finding the solutions that are going to help drive our economy forward in a more thriving, equitable manner for all Chicagoland. So instead of me talking anymore about what I do, since what I do is try to uplift the work of these other people here, let's just jump straight in and start hearing from our panelists. So to all four panelists, if you can share what you're doing, your basic work, but then also just what new activities or shared collaborations do you have that you think our audience would like to hear about today? So I'm going to start with April.
Thank you, Kylan. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm April Harrington. I'm the project manager of the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. I also work as an independent consultant with other workforce development nonprofits, and my background is in workforce development, nonprofit management. The Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative follows the sector partnership model, so it is employer-led. There are about 12 of the major health and hospital systems at the table, 6 of which also sit at the steering committee, and they're supported by a network of strategic partners, which include training providers, including CPS and city colleges, as well as community organizations, our workforce development system, and others. Together, they're all coming to the table to support a more inclusive healthcare workforce. So they do that through focusing on local and targeted hiring, focusing on areas where there's significant unemployment or underemployment with populations who have barriers to employment. They're also focused on strengthening the ties between employers and training providers, and making sure that the training and education landscape is serving healthcare needs. And then the third thing they're doing, which I think we've had sort of the most interesting growth on recently, is focusing on career retention and pathways. So we're not just focused on getting folks in the door in healthcare and building that pipeline into frontline work, but there's a growing focus on making sure that we also have progressive pathways up into quality jobs, family sustaining jobs, family wealth building careers. So some of our work that we're doing now is, doing some research, some deep data dives into some specific occupations that have, large numbers and are somewhat frontline, such as certified nursing assistants and medical assistants and patient service representatives. Those are roles where there are huge labor gaps and we're constantly hiring for. Those are also roles that have pretty heavy turnover rates. And so we're looking at those roles and thinking, what are the opportunities to advance up from those roles? A lot of our healthcare providers are hearing from their staff that, something that's really important to them is pathways, is upward trajectory, is employer-led opportunities to advance, to earn more, to reach new credentials. So that's something that I think is really exciting at our table, and that I'm seeing all across the space. And I'll stop there, but I'm happy to talk more about it later.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looping back to quite a few of those things. Deneen, can you share what's new and exciting about the Chicago Resiliency Network?
Sure, would love to. So good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Deneen Jackson. I'm the Executive Director for the Chicago Resiliency Network. And I would say I think I have the best job ever, because right now I'm working with employers, so corporations around the city of Chicago, for them to think about their employees. So building trauma-informed, healing-centered workplaces that are better for those employees, as we're all dealing with some sort of burnout, anxiety, stress, or trauma, and helping them to build resilient teams. And so through this work, we do this in 3 ways. There's a learning component to our program where we're learning about the neuroscience behind trauma. So that's the brain science behind trauma, and thinking through best practices on how to train managers and set up HR policies and procedures. We're a cohort-based model. So typically I'm working with 8 to 10 companies at a time, and we're learning together. So that affords us the opportunity to share best practices. And in this space, we're creating new solutions, things we've never seen before. And so we're collaborating, learning from each other in unique types of ways. And then it's not good to just learn something, you have to move to action. So in our program, we have a framework where we're challenging organizations to test these best practices within their organizations to understand the impact. And as a result, think about their next steps for building and widening the culture of wellness within their organizations. Prior to being at the Resiliency Network, I spent 10.5 years at an organization called Year Up. So I'm very passionate about the workforce. I spent time there on their corporate engagement team, where I placed, they told me when I left, over 1,200 young adults, and worked with over 400 managers to place young adults in internships across the country, working with big corporations like JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Allstate. And so I'm very passionate about the workforce and look forward to having this discussion. And then the second part of your question, Kylan, was what's happening that's new and interesting. So I'm really excited. After this call, I'm kicking off a program for a grant that the Resiliency Network, along with CARA and the Chicago Workforce Funders Alliance, earned together to test out best practices for employers for young adults ages 18 to 29 in the Chicagoland market, young adults of color. And so that's really interesting, because we're going to be able to merge our different programs together to support about 6 organizations. And this grant was issued to us by the Casey Foundation and the National Fund for Workforce. And so really looking forward to testing those best practices and learning from the national partners that we will be working with that grant. And so I will stop there and look forward to the continuing discussion.
Thanks, Janine. And I can confirm that Chicagoland Workforce Wonderlands is also equally excited on this joint venture. It's going to be some really amazing work going to come out of that. Shay, can you share with everyone how Aon has just been a leader in the Chicago Apprenticeship Network and really showing how employers can really take some lead?
Yeah, and Janine, I'm so surprised that we've never met before this because I think our work overlaps so much. So Shay Robinson, I lead the external portion of our apprenticeship program. As Kelly mentioned, we created this network in combination with Accenture and Zurich called the Chicago Apprentice Network, where we have it's employer-led, and we have the Foundation of Apprentices where we connect with nonprofits, other community-based organizations, educational partners, elected officials, and you name it. And the idea of this is to really diversify the workforce and to create non-traditional pathways. I think when one thinks, once you graduate, it's either, college, you can do an apprenticeship, but usually it's in the trades. Or you go off and you serve. And so I think how we've been a leader with the help of, like I said, other employers like Zurich and Accenture is creating spaces mainly in finance, insurance, IT, healthcare, and now really manufacturing, how we can start having professional apprenticeship programs. And I think what our organization is up to now inside of Aon is we have expanded into 6 additional cities, which has been a lot of fun for me, a lot of traveling. But we've expanded into 6 additional cities with our partners and created ecosystems like Chicago to get other employers to create these different career pathways. Internally in Aon, we just wrapped up our interviews for each city for our 2nd year of expansion. So a lot of fun. Can't wait to get into this discussion.
Thank you. And then our last panelist is Tammy. So Tammy, can you explain how the Talent Solutions Connector connects and collaborates and opens up new opportunities with what we've already heard?
I would love to. I know we went alphabetically, but I feel like this is a perfect order for us because my name's Tammy Hilberry. I work for Origami Works Foundation. I'm the program officer there. And one of the projects that we've been working on for the past probably 18 months or so is something called Talent Solutions Connector, which is essentially, it's a website. It's a directory of programs for employers, by employers. We developed this in collaboration with a group of employers. Our main goal is to make it easier for employers to get connected with amazing organizations like the ones you just heard from, all of which you can find on Talent Solutions Connector. We have a variety of searchable it's a searchable directory. We have a variety of different kinds of programs. We have everything from recruiting and hiring, all kinds of recruiting and hiring, training and development. We also do a lot of retention and inclusion programs are in there, as well as this best practice sharing. So employer tables, we have a huge focus on collaboration. We think that that is the way of the future. And frankly, so few employers are aware that these programs exist, that they're available to them, that they are often free, that they can often be subsidized. And right now the conversation is so much about hiring and retention. There's it's front and center, even in the main news that you see every day outside of workforce development. And we really believe that this is a 21st century solution to a 21st century problem, that just straight hiring, ways that people have been hiring in the past, aren't necessarily working today, and that retention really needs to be a part of that. So while we do have an internal focus on diversity and equity in hiring practices, we're also really focused in our conversation with employers about how hiring from some of these underrepresented populations or overlooked populations can be a win-win-win because, not only are they adding to their workforce, they're getting an entire person who has a team behind them, right? That they're coming with built-in help, right? So we're really focused on connecting employers with partners that can help them with all of their talent needs. So that's what we're really excited about right now.
So we kind of open up into our first area of topics. So in our modern world where we're coming out of COVID, whatever you want to define that as, combined with, high levels of retirement of certain populations, and particularly in certain industries and all these things, we're constantly hearing about worker shortages, which usually leads to conversations about hiring. But I actually kind of want to jump over that a little bit and think about what do you do once you get those people in the door, and also retention. So you retain our workers, we don't have to hire as many new ones. And I know all of you have done a lot of work in this space. So I'm just going to start with Denise, but can you just talk about kind of the new perspectives employers are having on retention and what's been going on at the Resiliency Network to tackle that?
You're absolutely right, Kylan. 4 years ago, the Chicago Resiliency Network was a topic to think about because we understood that certain employees needed support in the workplace because of the neighborhoods that they came from across Chicago, the South and West sides. But through COVID, we understand that many people are, like you said, Kylan, experiencing what I call the concurrent pandemics. So it's not just COVID, it's the work from home, school from home, it's the many losses that people have had. It's the societal challenges we're having, political unrest. Now we have a lot of macro things across the world that we're looking at. And as a result, people are rethinking their time and where they're spending time for their professional careers. Employers recognize this, and so they are thinking about how do they work to change their workplace culture to be more supportive of their employees so that they can thrive through these challenges, not only in their professional lives, but their personal lives, because we know the worker that you see in the office or on Zoom doing their work, they're bringing their whole selves to work. And so thinking about the challenges of mental health, and that I always say, you may not have a mental health diagnosis, but everyone has a mental health need. And so how can you retrain your managers so that they are considerate, that's being trauma informed, understanding the challenges that their workers are going through, and creating environments of psychological safety so that those employees can feel comfortable with not only talking to their managers and connecting with their peers, but also access the resources in a different way that are available from organizations. So through their healthcare programs, their EAP programs, a lot of organizations have been revamping those type of benefits so that they can better meet the needs of their employees. And I can go into detail about that later. But really, organizations must change their culture now if they want to continue to thrive and be productive. And that only occurs when you have employees that are engaged, can be present, and so that they can be productive in their thoughts and in their actions.
Shay, kind of on that same idea of it's not just enough to hire somebody, it's you have to support them as an employer. Apprenticeships are just known for having that kind of built in the process, but apprenticeships in corporate America aren't something a lot of people are familiar with. Can you just kind of share how this kind of historic model is being used in this new space to support workers?
Yeah, so I'll start with Ann, and then I'll kind of branch out with this idea of we had roles that we've seen a low retention rate and a high turnover rate for. And what we noticed is that those roles were not very diversified, and we hired from a very structured environment. You come from a 4-year college, you come from this school, and what we've seen is, we bring people in, we'll train them, and then they'll go to a different employer. And we're like, what is going on? What is happening? How can we keep these individuals? And our founder, Bridget Gaynor, she tells the story of when she looked out of the window, she's in Harold Washington College, and wondered why we never recruited from there, because the college is right next to our building. And so what we decided to do was, like I said, in partnership, start this apprenticeship model where we partner with local city colleges for the educational portion, which all of our employers in the network have some sort of credentialing. We use city colleges where we provide the 2-year degree for our apprentice, no matter, and it's no age, by the way, guys. It's not like you freshly graduate from high school, in college. We have, our most senior apprentices, I think 60 years old, right? You could be transitioning careers, et cetera. It's your foot in the door to a corporate environment. And so we provide that. And then we work with 1 Million Degrees to provide wraparound services. Traditionally, if you don't, have like a 4-year degree, or you come from a different industry and workforce, you might have that professional aptitude that others might. And so 1 Million Degrees provides wraparound services for us. And we do this in each city. And what we noticed was that investment into our apprentices left an 80%, 80 plus, I'll say, percent retention rate of what we started with since our inception. And so this copy and paste into each city, this copy and paste with other employers. We ask that your minimum apprenticeship program, which, Kylan, to your point, you can't have like a boot camp, I guess I would say. It's not 6 weeks. It's not, you invest at least a year with this apprentice. You provide them a certification. And what you've noticed is like this, sort of like hug of like, thank you so much for investing in me. And it's like, no, this is an investment for us as well. And, you get people that say, so what happens if they drop out of the program? You're like, what happens when you train someone and then they leave you? It's the same sort of model. And so I would say that that's what we're doing to restructure how we look at a 4-year degree versus investing in a degree to get someone in the door. And I would say now what we're doing is those individuals that came in as an apprentice that are now going to other positions that within Aon that do require a 4-year degree, is that we have something called the Launch Program. And then we're working on how do we partner with 4-year institutions to help additionally, I guess, credential our apprentices that came in with a 2-year degree.
Thanks, Shay. So I feel like the issue of retention, if we just skipped over healthcare and the burnout issues and all the things that have come from the last few years to make retention in hospitals even more difficult. April, what are your employers dealing with, and what are they trying to do to confront this issue?
Thanks, Kylan. Yes, burnout is real in healthcare, and we have a healthcare labor shortage that is just growing. I think many of you on this call probably know about our nursing shortage across the country. That is a real problem that our Chicagoland employers are dealing with. And something that we talk a lot about at our table is a shortage of folks in those sort of frontline positions. So not just clinical roles like medical assistants and certified nursing assistants, but also it's very difficult for my employers to recruit and retain people in environmental services, food services, all those support roles that exist in hospitals. And so they're getting creative both in the recruitment and also realizing that, it's not just about retaining someone once they're in the door, but it's also a really good strategy to recruit people in the door from the get-go if you have progressive programs. If you can say to someone, come take a role in environmental services, and we have X, Y, and Z to support you in figuring out your career pathway into a clinical position, if that's what you're interested in. Or we have an apprenticeship model in food service to become a manager and to get your ServSafe manager licenses. I know this is a model that Advocate Aurora, for example, has piloted. There's a little bit more acceptance of the apprenticeship model in healthcare right now, which is great. But overall, I've just seen across these hospital systems a growth of programs that are aimed for the existing workforce. So leadership programs, not just tuition reimbursement, but putting tuition up front, and perhaps even paying folks for their time studying. That is something that's being talked about a lot. I'm not sure how often that's successfully being implemented at the moment, but it's something that we're all talking about. Another thing is, supporting folks in frontline positions with all the types of things that happen in our lives that make it difficult to go to work and to continue going to work for 90 days, 6 months, a year. Advocate Aurora, again, just launched a program with, I forget the exact name of the position that they're calling it, but they're sort of career coaches. They're folks who are assigned a caseload of people in frontline positions as soon as they get in the door. And their job is to help those folks talk through any barriers like transportation, childcare, if they're experiencing any housing or food insecurity. Those folks are trained to help connect them with resources. And they also have a budget to support emergency needs, to directly fund emergency needs for employees so that they're able to continue going to work. And as Shay described, that's, employees want to see their employer invest in them. And that means something, for retention.
So Tammy, if someone's hearing this and thinking that resonates, that makes sense, but I just don't know how to do it, what should they do?
Well, I just shared a link. Yeah, Talent Solutions Connector. We are really striving to uplift all of this amazing work that's being done. I mean, we have tons of folks on this call, but there are so many employers who, it's not that they aren't interested in this, it's that they're just unaware. So we're really working right now to increase awareness and to facilitate connections. So our site kind of was a brainchild of several very smart people. And one of the things that we're looking to do is replace some of the old, you might have been in a collaboration, you might have been in an employer table, or you might have just had colleagues that you were chatting with about some problems you were facing. And someone might say, oh, you know what, I've got a spreadsheet of these organizations doing this work. Well, by the time you get that spreadsheet, as we know, there can be a lot of mobility, and maybe the contact isn't accurate anymore, or frankly, you have to know somebody to get your hands on some of these really great lists. So we're kind of breaking out of the spreadsheet model and putting it onto a website. We also have some built-in infrastructure and systems in place to where we're making sure that we are maintaining these contacts and really facilitating them. So we're really excited about kind of breaking down the barrier between employers and these amazing providers who are doing all of this great work. And we do have an entire section on our website that is exclusively retention and inclusion practices. Most of our recruiting and hiring partners do include some kind of retention services in there, but you might be fully staffed. You might say, I have everybody that I need, but so many of my employees are having a hard time getting to work. Well, we've got partners that you can reach out to, and they can help you help connect your employees with transportation services. You might also be saying, I'm at a loss. I don't know why I keep losing employees. Well, it could be something that, very often a lot of these barriers to retention are not intentional. They're built in because this is just how it's always been done. I know I was in HR. You don't spend all day thinking, oh, how do I make things hard for people? It's the opposite. But at the same time, I think we all know how thin stretched everybody is right now. And so a lot of times things are done a certain way just because that's how it's always been done. And I think that we know that that's not necessarily the best way to do things. So we have so many partners who are able to come in and do an assessment and take a look around, get an outside perspective, get some fresh eyes on the situation, because I guarantee you're not the only person dealing with this. You're not even the third person dealing with this. There are hundreds of people that are, and there are experts who are excited and really skilled in helping you set up new systems so that your employees can thrive, and therefore, your bottom line can thrive too. It's not just the right thing to do, it's also the right business move. So if you're interested in any of those things, I'm always open to have a conversation. I'm very proud of our site, so I'm happy to walk people through it. But talentsolutionsconnector.net that I shared in the chat, you can check that out, look around a little bit and see if there's anything interesting to you.
Deneen, do you have something you want to add to that?
I do. Can I add to that? So based on what Shay, April, and Tammy said, employers are doing a lot to change and support their employees in the workplace. One thing I've been seeing also is that employers are accessing their workers' voice in a different way. So they're asking their employees what they need and what they want instead of assuming. And that's doing a couple of things. It's being efficient, meaning those companies aren't creating solutions where there's really not a need. But by asking your employees what they need, it's generating a buy-in, and it's helping those, it's letting those employees see, like Shay said, employees want you to invest in them. And so when you're asking them what they want instead of being more directive, that's a wonderful way to build camaraderie and loyalty to your organization, which, as we talk about resilience, that's a huge piece of resilience too.
So I think a couple of people, but particularly Tammy said explicitly, sometimes doing the right thing is also the thing that's the best for the bottom line, the best for your company. So I just want to open up the space to talk explicitly for a minute about when we say the right thing, focusing on equity, particularly racial equity and other underrepresented populations within the workforce. Does anyone want to kind of talk a little bit about why doing the right thing there is actually also the best thing for your business?
I'll tap into it a little bit, and then I'll let you guys, because I think you guys are the professionals here when it comes to the bottom line. But I think when I got involved with apprenticeship programs, I didn't hear about it. I didn't know what it really meant. And when you talk about doing the right thing, I think that, Tammy, you touched on it. It's not always the most popular thing, but it's not always the most known thing. I think you always do what you've known to do. And so you take two individuals that, come from very different backgrounds. One has the heart, the passion to do whatever it is that, your organization needs. You can train certain things, but some things, you can't, either got it or, you don't. And then you have an individual that comes with, hey, you've been stamped credentialed because you came from this, college. Doing the right thing is which individual makes the most sense for our organization. Which pathway makes the most sense? And when you think about that, it may not always be the most popular, and you challenge different, things. I work with all sorts of organizations, and I forgot who brought up Advocate Aurora. You bring up JPMorgan Chase, Walgreens, all these businesses that I've sat down with their HR organizations, and we have pulled at things that aren't the most popular, but they're the right thing to do. And I think, Deneen, we're in competition on who has the most satisfying job, but it really warms my heart to see a lot of the HR managers, the CHROs, on up to the CEO say, I want to invest in changing what my culture looks like. And so, yeah, I'll stop there so I can get on the soapbox about it.
And I'll add to that. So Shay, I totally get it. So I referenced my role at Europe for 10.5 years, and that's where a lot of my comments are going to come from here. And I thought that was the best job too, because there's nothing like supporting someone who has been disconnected from the workforce to training and a role, and them succeeding in that role and the confidence that comes. I believe that there's dignity in work that surpasses a paycheck. And that's from the work that a person is able to, the work they're doing for a corporation. It's how they're supported by their managers. It's how they can see a career path for them and a company that cares for them. And that translates into confidence. That resonates through their family. That resonates through their community. You never know who's watching them. And so that's the amplifying effect of these programs. You help one person, but you may be helping 10. And I saw that at Year Up. And I thought I had the best job there as well, because you saw family members that were changed, young adults who were making more money than their parents. They were in careers that they never thought that they could be in. So I echo and agree with you, connecting disconnected talent to opportunities is a prize for that employee. I also want to say it's a prize for those teams. So not only are they getting the staff that they need, I saw so many minds change about how they looked at talent. Before, everyone did think that you needed a 4-year degree for all roles, and slowly over the years, people are starting to change their view, because before the pandemic, before this great resignation, there were already gaps in different roles, where there was a need to fill roles in a different way and build talent like cybersecurity, data analytics, many other roles. I'm just grabbing a few there. But now companies it's imperative that they think differently about how they tap talent. And so breaking through stereotypes of where they previously thought that they could tap talent. And when they're testing and working with young adult or any adult, that's disconnected, I've seen many minds change about how they looked at talent. And many of those managers and HR teams told me that, the blessing was theirs because their eyes have been open and their perspectives have changed. And again, now more than ever, HR teams and hiring managers, it's not just the HR team, it's those managers that are onboarding these new talent members of their team. They have to think differently about how they may need to support them differently, how they may need to learn a new skill. I always, and I'll just say one more thing, a lot of people are promoted into roles because they're successful in that job, like they've exceeded the expectations in that job. Many managers haven't been trained to be managers who are developers of people. And before, you can kind of get by with that. But we're in a totally different world now where managers have to be developers of people. And that's a skill that can be learned. But organizations have to invest time and resources to retrain their managers to fit that skill set for the most part. Nothing's conclusive, but most managers have not been trained as managers.
Very true, Janine. So before we go to the next question, I just want to remind all the audience members that you can drop questions for any of the panelists in the chat, and we'll have some Q&A time at the very end. So talk today.
Kyle, can I jump in just real quick?
Yeah.
If anyone on this call is interested in connecting with some of these populations, Talent Solutions Connector actually does have a filter once you get into search. If you have an interest or a mandate in reaching one of these prioritized populations, we do have that as a filter option because a lot of our programs do exclusively or primarily, they serve certain populations like people of color, veterans, workers with disabilities, undocumented immigrants, returning citizens, anything like that. So it is possible to connect with programs who have representations of those populations if you're looking exclusively to hire or support those populations.
Great point. So we talked a lot about doing things differently. And even if someone is completely on board mentally, emotionally on doing things differently, new things are still scary, but scary things are less scary if you do it together. So everyone here has kind of talked a little bit about collaboration or coming together, but I wanted to really lift it up of how are bringing different employers together to tackle these issues, making an impact that maybe they wouldn't have had on their own. April, as the convener of a healthcare collaborative, I'm going to let you kick this one off.
Sure. Yes, that is what my table does, is brings employers together. And I'm honored to work with some wonderful employers that have been very innovative and creative and just on their own are implementing some groundbreaking strategies and programs like the ones I've been referencing. And the case for support to collaborate on those is sometimes hard. And it is one of the challenges at my table. I think that there is heightened competition, amongst these employers to recruit the healthcare talent that exists in Chicagoland, because there's a shortage, and that is a challenge to collaborative work. At the same time, I think folks come to our table because they recognize that some of these issues are systemic, or some of the opportunities to advance our goals are better taken from a systems lens and by all of us instead of one of us alone. For example, one of the recent successes we've had at our table is building a really active youth pathways committee. So these are all folks that do career awareness programs for high schoolers, college students, middle school students. And a lot of these hospitals have been doing that for years. They've built their own programs. I'm not saying competition doesn't exist there, but they've come together at this table saying, it's a really hard thing for us to say, let's start with someone when they're in middle school and track them and give them opportunities, and then ultimately have them work for us forever. I know a lot of employers are, start those programs because they're concerned about their own workforce, but that's a tall order. And if all of the healthcare employers came together and, referred students who had been working with one employer to a different employer for their next sort of summer program in high school, and if there was more of a reciprocal ecosystem of healthcare employers collectively trying to expose young people to healthcare careers, give them opportunities to experience them and explore the myriad opportunities beyond just doctor and nurse. That's one of the things they're trying to do. Then maybe we'll all be more successful in the end. So we actually partnered with Talent Solutions Connector to create a youth pathways directory on our website with all of those programs that are aimed at youth. And again, that's just trying to, as an entire sector, come together on the youth career awareness aspect of our work. But yes, it is difficult it can be difficult to collaborate. But if we want to change, if we find through our discussions and our research that, hey, there's this occupation that has a lot of problems in healthcare, and we need to think about how to change the training structure or the wage scale or the certifications needed or the job description. If one employer is doing that, then getting the training ecosystem on board to meet their needs will be difficult. Some of this stuff needs to happen at the systems level. And I'm lucky that the healthcare employers recognize that, and that's why they're involved with my table.
Great. So one, thank you for also highlighting that collaboration is difficult. It's not the end all be all solver of all our problems. So Deneen, Shay, Tammy, do you want to share any stories of the highs or lows of collaboration and how this journey is going for your groups?
Mm-hmm. So at the Resiliency Network, we are a cohort-based model for corporations, and that has actually been identified by those participants, our members, as the highlight of their experience with the Resiliency Network. So for employers the members that are in our cohort are typically members of the HR team, or their people managers, or maybe or people who are participants in a business resource group at their organizations, the culture carriers. And particularly during COVID, those people have not been able to network and talk to others in their industry to share best practices and to learn what's happening within their organizations. So the benefit of our cohort is that we're able to discuss issues, hard issues that are happening within those organizations, and then brainstorm together with new solutions. So that's been a benefit, but also many of the organizations in our cohort. So in our cohort, we have companies like AT&T, United, Amazon. We also have hospital partners like Sinai, Northwestern, Rush Hospital. And then we have smaller mid-sized businesses in our cohort. So we've had like Blommer's Chocolate and Friedman Seating. And so those people are able to learn from each, and not-for-profits, excuse me. We've had not-for-profits like Chicago Commons and others. So by talking about their individual issues that are happening in their industries, in their workplace, and they can bounce those ideas off others, a lot of brainstorming occurs. Also, those companies have been doing things that are great already. So they have best practices or things that have been successful already. And so they're sharing what those tools or resources or activities that they're doing. And so it inspires others to maybe adopt some of those practices within their organization. So our cohort-based collaboration, again, it's been really successful for our partners, and they identify as so through our evaluation techniques for the value of our program.
Shay, what do companies get out of tackling the apprenticeship model through the apprenticeship network instead of, in theory, anyone can launch an apprenticeship program?
One, it's like we're the older sibling, right? Like you get all the bumps, the bruises, the, hardcore action with your parents, and, you avoid all of the nitty gritty, because we've been through those things. The conversations with lawyers, the conversations with DOL, the conversations with your HR teams, and, where the best practices and the things that you have to ask that, you don't have to start a program and then it topples or, because we've been through all of that. And I think having a diverse industry that we've collaborated with, so there's like an internal portion and then there's an external portion, right? So externally, we've collaborated with competitors, right? Because it's not about, my organization is doing insurance, your organization, we can't talk. It's like, hey, we're both doing the same thing. So we speak your language and we know what your teams are going to say, where the roadblocks are, where's the money going to come from and everything like that. And what we've noticed is that employers that have joined the network, and by the way, it's no cost, right? Like it just means like you have access to this network of nonprofits that have been verified, meaning that they work with an employer that's within the network. We have educational organizations or institutions that already have, the outline of the classes that need to be taken by your apprentices to, that have your career track there. And then I think internally with collaboration, I think someone mentioned it earlier about managers and everything, like that is a huge piece to how your apprenticeship program will either, succeed or fail, because you and your HR team can be like, great, we've collaborated and we think that this is awesome. But if your managers are like, I don't want an apprentice, I feel like I have to babysit, I feel like I have to retry, it's like this retraining of how you see it. And that requires collaboration with different departments. And so I would say that it's been awesome from an internal standpoint, challenging, but rewarding. And then externally, I think we have over like 150 employers that have joined around the nation to do this in this collaboration with nonprofits, educational institutions, but then getting media on board, all these different things I think have been rewarding. And Tammy, I know that we work with you guys, it's just been awesome collaborating, because why relearn something that's already been taught,
And, not to sound like a broken record, but if you're interested in learning about We call them employer peer networks. These are our employer tables. On Talent Solutions Connector, you can search by industry. There are many organizations that can help you connect with these services. You can meet and collaborate. You get together and kind of complain, and then also come up with solutions together. So yeah, if you're interested in that, take a look at Talent Solutions Connector, or again, reach out to me directly. I know some things that are in the works, and can help connect before they're available on the website.
Great. So I think it's about time for us to open up Q&A, and I have a few questions that we've gotten through the chat. So first of all, we mentioned a couple different places where we talked about like youth engagement and things like that. But can anyone kind of just share their experiences in working on the other end of the age spectrum? So that 45 plus, and experiences of programs or services specifically for that population.
I'll go, and I'll be quick because I think that was Gerardo's question. We learned so much. We have managers, Gerardo, that are from that have managed at McDonald's, or that have come from top of their organization in industry, that, like I said, our most senior apprentice within Aon's program is 60 years old. And we've learned so much from those individuals that are not the fresh, graduates or 20 or 30, okay, well, what do I do with my life now? We have those individuals that are saying, I want to change career pathways. This is not just for individuals that have freshly, graduated. And I flew to, I think it was California. We did an apprentice network event out there, and Accenture had an apprentice that was, I want to say 50. And he was telling his story about how he started college and everything like that, but couldn't finish. They had children, him and his wife had children, and he was a stay-at-home dad, and his wife actually went to work, and he wanted to get back into things, but it was too hard to sort of piece together this idea of how do I earn and learn at the same time. And he found Accenture's program and was able to get back on that track. And so I would just say apprenticeships, and I'm always going to sing the glory of apprenticeships. It's not the only model, but it's a great model, is what we use. And it's a ton of companies. So Gerardo, I'll drop the CAN website here, and then you can see what organizations are a part of the network. And we're more than happy to connect you with them for when their programs start in. And I think, Sam, you guys do something like that on the site, but I won't keep plugging. Well, I will keep plugging, but we'll go from there.
Great.
Just add there for Gerardo. Right now we have almost 5 generations in the workforce. So we do have to consider how to engage and continue to advance all employees until they're ready to step aside in the workplace. And the primary thing is for organizations to think about how they're providing opportunities to listen to their employees, to understand where they want to go and what they want to do, and then providing dollars and access to training. So whether that's an internal program that you're creating where you're retraining and providing shadowing, so an internal way that you can provide, like an internship is an opportunity, or an apprenticeship is for an employee to shadow another department to see how they fit in that role and how they like that role. We have wonderful community colleges across our city. And so accessing one of those community colleges or one of the other colleges for, upskilling and training is also an opportunity for organizations to support and retain those older employees that are in the workforce, which they add so much value as well, that their experience cannot be overshadowed or neglected. And it's in the teams where you have the diverse ages and experiences where you see a lot of magic, because everyone's bringing a different perspective. So I agree, we need to continue to support and train and activate the full potential of all employees across all age groups.
We have another question from Marcy focused on career advancement. So I'm just going to remind everyone, we've had a couple conversations about looking in like, do you really need a bachelor's degree for a lot of these roles? But if someone enters into an organization without some of those credentials that are, even if we can say aren't needed at certain levels, might be needed for higher levels of management and advancement, how are companies grappling with that idea of making sure there's a future within the company for those individuals?
I'll step in there. I've seen a lot of interest in this from the healthcare employers. Most often I've seen them, eliminate the need for a high school diploma for some frontline roles, perhaps lower a requirement from a bachelor's to an associate's degree. In healthcare, especially for those clinical roles, they're much more focused on certifications, and that has to do with medical boards, and that's a whole different bag. But when they're looking at admin roles, HR roles, I know that that's something that they've really been focused on, is looking at competencies and experience rather than just degrees, knowing that that is something that bars, what could be, highly qualified candidates from even getting through that first round of screening. So I know healthcare employers are looking at that.
It's like I saw Shay shaking her head during that question.
Yeah.
Do you have something you want to add?
I just wanted to, April, you're right. I think within Aon, we're re-looking at, okay, this individual may not need this for entry into the company, but to advance, they may need this for this, and there's this thing that keeps coming up rather than tuition reimbursement is actually like helping you to pay for your degree while you're there. If I don't have the money now, I can't be reimbursed. And so changing how we look at that internally. And then there are companies like LinkedIn, et cetera, blah, 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 where a lot of these top people don't have degrees. And so they're changing that. So I would just encourage you to see which organization you're looking at working for. And I mean, I'm more than happy to help plug there while organizations figure it out, right? We don't have it all together now, but I think as everyone's learning to reskill and retrain, happy to be a resource.
And just to wrap up that plug, I just did a quick audit and I have 22 programs on Talent Solutions Connector that focus on what we call incumbent worker training or upskilling. And they'll help you design a training program for your existing employees to get the skills that they need to advance into other jobs that you may have that you don't currently have anybody that can fill.
Great. Thanks for putting that little bow on it, Tammy. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Kate to wrap things up for us.
I feel so bad putting the stop on this conversation. It's amazing. I feel like we could go for a long, long time. But thank you, all of you, for your leadership, and to our attendees for joining us today. And I wanted to also thank Social Responsibility Chicago board member Damian Heron for coordinating today's program, which is timely and a needed discussion, and just really wonderful and thought-provoking. I encourage everyone here to follow us on social media for upcoming programs and events. And SR Chicago members should save the date of August 17th for our annual meeting, which will be a fun afternoon, including a happy hour and networking with our colleagues. If you are not a member, please consider membership with us. And finally, a post-meeting email will be sent to everyone with the program takeaways and a brief survey to help us enhance programming we're bringing to the social impact community. So if you could give us your feedback, we would really appreciate it. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this morning and for working to make a stronger, more connected Chicago. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.